Kyle. He is a local hard money lender. When I say local, to Maryland, DC, and Virginia. I actually found him when I was searching online for hard money lender when we first started joining Fortune Builders, the group. And I contacted them, and Melissa went ahead and replied to me. She's the one that I interface with the most. I usually call Kyle when I'm bugging him to try to negotiate something. That's when I text him directly. And they vetted us. We sent our LLC documents and everything, and it's been very easy to work with Kyle and the group. Basically, we have 3 projects we have worked with Kyle on. The first one was our first ever renovation that we did in DC by Catholic University. Kyle funded us for that, and we were able to sell it easily. Well, we sold it, and then we got rid of it. And then we went back to Kyle for a house in Baltimore that we're currently working. We're halfway through the project. He also was able to fund us for that. And then the third project, he actually saved us. We had talked to somebody else, and in the middle of the just before we were set to close, a week before, the other lender, the guidelines changed, and they were no longer able to fund us the money. So I had to go back and knock on Kyle's door and say, "Can you please fund us?" And they were able to fund us and actually do it within 2 weeks. So that's another thing about new funding resources. They were pretty quick. So, and that's a project that we just purchased last week. I believe it was last week. And we are getting ready. We just started to do the cleaning. And that project is in Cheverly, Maryland. And Miki has been doing the Facebook Live on that project. So this is I wanted you guys to welcome Kyle. And Kyle, I give you the table. Please introduce yourself. Tell us about you. And then I had already sent 4 questions to Kyle. We're going to talk about the current market and what he sees. We're also going to talk about what he decided to fund, because him and all the others as well, hard money, have changed their funding requirements, and what he needs to see changed in order to go back to his original requirements for funding, and also just get a little bit of information from Kyle as far as what he sees with the market.
All right, Aissa, thank you so much. I remember it was just a few months ago, we had that lunch over near our office in Gaithersburg. Our office is actually 806 West Diamond, so we're very local to Gaithersburg. And we got together with Mickey as well. And so I've been a little bit about my background. I've been a private lender for over 10 years, and it's all I do now. So I fund real estate investors. So I put money up for real estate investors that buy and rehab properties. So it's kind of the exact market that you're talking about. And we're not a big national lender that, let's say, has, are you able to hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay, so we're really focusing just on Maryland, DC, and Virginia. We are not one of these national companies that's trying to do business locally out of California or New York. So I think that's our edge, is that we're local and we have boots on the ground and we can get out to properties quickly. We understand the market areas that we lend in. Aissa asked me a couple of questions that I want to address. The first was kind of my sense of the market. And so I'll talk a little bit about what I think about the real estate market right now and how that feeds into lending. So 6 to 8 weeks ago, to be honest with you, I was a little bit nervous. I was more nervous than I am today because everyone was really panicking with COVID-19. Everything was shutting down, and it just seemed like there was a lot of unknowns in the market. And we were also concerned, well, what's going to happen when our clients, our real estate investors, put their properties on the market for sale? Are they going to sell, and at a decent price? And so that question was in my mind. I was optimistic, but that question was still in my mind. But what we're seeing now in the portfolio of deals that we have is that if properties are repaired, they're fixed up nicely, and they're priced right, they're actually going under contract and selling. So, and you guys as agents, you have access, you can see what's going on in the marketplace. You can see that a lot of people have pulled their properties off the market. So the supply has gone down, and there's really not a huge supply of inventory. So at the same time, demand has gone down because of the crisis. So properties are still selling. So I feel somewhat optimistic. Now I know that a lot of people have lost their jobs, and there's some issues obviously in the economy, but I feel like the real estate market in DC is going to do okay in the long run because one, we have the government backing everything up. So a lot of people have jobs that are government related jobs, or they're somehow, that maybe they're one step removed from that or two steps removed from that. So that really supports the real estate market, supports the economy. So I would say I'm cautiously optimistic about the market, the real estate market. And I don't see that we're going to have a horrible recession, because I think a lot of the things that have happened are temporary. I think as we start to see things reopen, I think we're going to see the market bounce back, the jobs market. However, that doesn't mean that that as a lender, we haven't had to exercise some caution, because many of you have probably, you may have talked to over a period of time, maybe some of our competitors that were out in California or New York, or even locally, that were kind of funding the loans, then selling the paper off. And we never operated that way. We're a true private lender. So we actually fund deals for real estate investors with capital that we have in-house, or there are people that invest money with us, and we put that money out there, in these real estate projects. So we never relied on like the Wall Street model of let's fund a loan, let's sell it off, let somebody else service it. So I think that gave us more flexibility. A lot of that money has gone from the market, it's kind of disappeared. So we're funding deals, but we're being cautious. Aisa asked me sort of, what are the guidelines? Like, what are we funding? So we're still funding all the same deals that we normally would, single family properties that you might acquire that need a lot of work. You want to rehab them and then resell them at the after repair value, at the top of the retail market. We're wanting to see money brought to the table. So we're wanting to see our borrowers bring money to the table, maybe a little bit more than we did before, just to make sure that there's enough cushion in there, that you have enough cash in the deal, and that basically that it's going to be a safe transaction for everybody. We want you to be successful ultimately and come back like Aisa and Mickey have done, because just to do one transaction and be like, oh, we just funded one deal and then that's it, is really, that's not our goal. Our goal is to do multiple transactions, because then we have everybody's financial information in our system. We're able to just move on to the next deal. And Aisa mentioned this last one that we closed, I think they were going somewhere else, and it might have been one of the larger institutional lenders, and those guidelines changed. And all of a sudden they were told that either, I guess, it couldn't be funded, or the guidelines had just changed at the last minute.
The guidelines had changed. The guidelines had changed. Yep.
So, as a private lender, we have more flexibility since we're not selling our paper off. The guidelines are really, we're still lending up to 60 to 65% of the after repair value. So we're still lending in that range. The loan to cost, which means how much of the deal we'll fund, we used to do up to 90% of the total project cost. Now we're a little bit more conservative. I would say on a typical deal, we're probably in the 85% range now, typically. So it's it's very close, but we're being just slightly more conservative. We're wanting to see that you guys are getting a good deal on the property. Now, I will say this, what I've noticed is that with the whole COVID situation, in the last, I would say 30 days, the real estate investors that I'm seeing buying properties, they're actually getting slightly better prices because the sellers, whether they're an institution or whether they're just a private individual, they're actually afraid of what's going on. So like, I better sell this thing now because I don't know what the market's going to be. So it's actually an opportunity to pick up a distressed property, maybe at a little bit better price than you would have picked it up at 2 months ago. And honestly, I'm not that worried about the ARV numbers changing in 3-4 months from now. I'm cautiously optimistic that that's going to hold firm. We don't know for sure, but I think it probably will. So that's basically in a nutshell how we do it. And then also you asked, when is it going to go back to, let's say, the way it was before? I think everybody needs to get back to work. And then once we see the unemployment rate stabilize and kind of some inventory come on the market, more regular consumer inventory, and then we see prices, if prices hold firm, let's say 3 months from now, we're going to be back to just a regular business as usual. Although I think the private lending market and hard money lending market is going to be driven more back to the way it was 5 years ago with local guys like myself. I think some of the institutional players in the market, they may have to adjust their guidelines because they may say, well, we're going to stay conservative. So, but I don't want to talk too much here, guys. So you throw out some questions, or did I answer a lot of your questions there?
Yes, you did the main questions, definitely. I wanted to see if somebody else wants to. So basically my main questions to you were, and I'm sorry, I have 2 screens going on because I was trying to make sure I had all the questions that people were going to ask going. So now so do you think, because I know when you just came in, just before people started coming in, you were saying that you're optimistic about this market. I know things are starting to reopen slowly. I mean, we still have to have all these crazy barriers every time we go in different places. And we are also seeing a lot more inventory because people are contacting Miki with investment or rentals that they no longer want to bother with.
Yeah.
So that we are seeing, absolutely. Now, I am also hearing that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are starting to slash down appraisals. So when which is an interesting thing. So what I'm hearing from one of my regular lenders from the buyer side, because I am a full-time real estate agent, not only are the appraiser, if the house is occupied, the appraisers don't even come into the house. They just do a virtual appraisal, meaning they're looking at everything that's going on in the neighborhood, comparing it with your size. And then Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae are starting to slash those prices those appraisals by up to 8%. Now, if they start to do that, that's going to affect us that are investors. Because again, as an investor, we're always doing comps. You have to. The market is very dynamic. You purchase the property on a weekly basis. You have to look at your comps and adjust as needed. But if those comps are not even something that you can rely on, because now, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae are starting to slash down the appraisal value, that's going to cause more harm to the market than it needs to help the market. Because the way I'm looking at things, it should be towards the end of the year that some of these properties will devalue. But the way I'm looking at it right now, what I'm seeing, I have buyers. I just got connected with a new buyer because people think they're deals, they're ready to buy. They're starting to contact me and my partner, my real estate partner, who's actually online, Clairette. And we're getting people that are calling us, they want to go look at houses. So the market is still strong.
Yeah.
People are still looking to buy properties. We're still selling properties. And then, but if Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae are starting to do things like that, they're going to be hurting us more than they're helping us recover from this
Yeah.
pandemic.
Well, let me address that. So that's interesting information that you're sharing there. So I would say, first of all, we don't know how long it's going to go on. We don't know when will they allow appraisers back in these properties. That might be 30 days from now, 45 days from now. I'm telling you, they cannot keep the system completely shut down very much longer. They just can't do it. The economy, people won't stand for it. You can't keep everything just permanently shut down. There has to be some time period, whether it's 30 days, 45 days, that you say it's safe for an appraiser to wear a mask and go into a property. Now, on the properties that are flipped, the nice thing about it, one, they're almost always vacant. So the appraisers actually can go in right now to those properties. They can see the work that you guys have done and how beautiful the properties look. Two, and we were made this in our email blast, is that if you were a buyer, would you want to buy a house that the people were living there 2 weeks ago, that it's kind of, oh, it's nice, but it's lived in, but it might have some germs or something there? Or do you want to buy a property that has completely been renovated, has all new fixtures, materials, tile? I would think that means that renovated property has more value. But like you said, that is a concern if they're slashing values. So is there a way that maybe pictures can be given to that appraiser to say on these retail deals, if it looks nice, to say, all right, you don't want to come in, here's a package, here's a virtual tour of the pictures, you can see that this property is fully renovated. I think that's a short-term problem. There's no way they're going to tell appraisers, let's say 90 days from now, that they still can't go in properties. I don't see that. I think they're going to allow them to go in there. But yeah, cutting appraisals, if they're doing that, that's definitely a negative thing, and that's a concern. I haven't really seen that impact any of our investors yet, but it might at some point.
Okay. So there's some questions that just came in, and somebody had asked if you still fund 100% and maybe they join in later. So you did say that usually the ARV was 60 to 75%.
60 to 65.
I'm sorry. So you are at 60 to 65% of the ARV is what you're funding now, correct?
We are, but yeah, we are. That's what we're funding. But usually that's not the limiting factor in a deal. Usually it's that number we talked about, the loan to cost. So loan to cost is like what you're paying for the property and how much it costs to renovate it. So prior to all this crisis, we were actually lending up to 90% of the total project cost. Now, that still meant that people have to bring money to the table. You always have to bring something to the table, except in situations, there are some unique situations where it's like you get a property that nobody else could get. Let's say it's so far below market, the ARV is 300, but you got it for 75,000, something crazy because you had inside information, something like that. There could be an exception that you wouldn't need the same amount of money. But for most like market deals, you used to need 10% of the project. Now it's probably more around 15, 20, somewhere in that range, depending on the size of the deal, how discounted it is, that type of thing, of the cost of the acquisition and rehab, those two sort of numbers. That comes into play more than ARV typically.
Okay.
So on
can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah. Can you hear me now, or? Yeah, I can hear you.
Yep. It was just me. Sorry.
So people are asking, do we do 100% financing? We do 100% of the purchase in some cases. But if we do, we need to hold a reserve for the construction escrow to make sure the property gets fixed. So it's kind of, a lot of times you'll see in the industry, people say, we do 100% of purchase. Well, that's not really the same thing as 100% financing. So you're always going to need some money at the table. Any legitimate deal, you're always going to need some money at the table, and realistically.
Okay, understood. I am trying to go back to the other questions that were trickling in. Hang on a second, chat. There we go. As a direct private lender, do you consider rehab experience from the investor? If so, what are your requirements?
Very good question. Very good question. That's something that has become more and more important in the industry. And Aissa, you and I have had that conversation. It's on the institutional side, they actually got to a point where they would say, I want to see your HUD ones. I want to see what you paid for a property, what you sold, that you'd have to provide reams of documentation to prove to this big institutional lender that you were good enough to borrow the money. So that's the direction the industry was moving. We were never that strict. Like, we actually do first-time investors. Of course, we prefer experience. We like to see experience, and that's important to know that people know what they're doing. But we also do first-time investors. We're just going to be more careful when we underwrite the file. We're going to be looking over your shoulder to make sure it's a good deal. And we're not just going to make a loan because we can make money on it. We're actually going to look at the deal. Melissa and Aissa, you can probably speak to this. You know, Melissa and myself will look at the deal. We'll say, all right, well, that looks like you have a margin there. It looks like it's a decent transaction. Or we might say, you know what, you guys are paying too much for that property. You know, maybe you should just, you know, cancel that contract and go for another one. Maybe it's not a big enough margin. So we try to advise you on whether we think it's a good transaction or not. So, but yeah, we do look at experience. That's part of our underwriting process. But we have tons of first-time borrowers that they started off as first-time borrowers. They had money to put into the transaction. They had a good deal. They were successful on their first one. Then they went on to do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They went on to do all those other transactions. So, yep. So that's how we look at it.
Okay. And if I can add to that, one of the reasons why we decided to combine forces, the 3 companies into one, is because we started realizing that depending on certain markets, some private money, some hard money wanted you to have 3 projects, 3 HUDs, meaning you sold 3 projects, then they start loosening up their interest rate. Others now, one of the reasons why we lost another one, they wanted us to go up to 5. So because of COVID, so and then other people just completely stopped for providing any type of lending. So, I mean, that, I don't know if that helps the question, the person who put the question. So depending on the lender, they will ask, and I can vouch that new funding, when we started with them, what I explained to him is I told them my experience as a real estate agent and how I had managed projects. So he used that to vet us. And then we brought in Mickey and Israel and Maisonette. And because we're there and we're managing the project, so he's using that as our vetting. And you still have to be a personal guarantor on the loan. So we still had to sign the paperwork. But, you know, new funding does work with new investors. The other questions, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I would say over 50% of our borrowers that we have in our portfolio have a real estate license. Now, they may not all be active agents, but some of them just have a license because that's how they get the deals. That's how like you and I are looking at the same system. We have access to the Bright MLS system. We're looking at the same
Yeah.
data, the same comps. You save money when you sell the property because you don't pay the same real estate commission. So it makes sense. Like, you know the market a little bit better. So if somebody's an agent, we tend to give that more credibility than just somebody off the street who doesn't know that much about real estate. So.
Okay, so another question was, what is your protocol for construction draw? So I'm guessing the question is, how do you go about doing the draw on the
Excellent question.
project?
Yeah. So, and I think this is another thing, and you told me you had a bad experience with some lender
Yes.
that they ordered. They were like, I think they were, was that patch of land out of California or something like that, but they were trying to do
Yes.
construction draws on a property in Maryland from California. And they've like charged $300 to come out there. It's like multiple parties involved just to get the deal just to actually get out to the house. So that's the great thing about us and being local is that, think about it this way, the same guy who's going to come out initially and look at the house and kind of do the valuation of the ARV, usually the same person is going to come out and look at your draw progress. So he's already familiar with that house. He did the report and he's familiar with it. So our draw process is, you go to our website when you want to draw, you put in some information about, okay, I think I completed draw 1, 2, or 3. I did this work. Then Melissa orders the inspection. We try to get him out there as soon as we can. It depends on how busy he is, but he's local, so it is generally faster. He goes out, meets with you, takes pictures of the progress, has a conversation with you. Then he emails us a report with the pictures and like a summary of what work was done. And then once I review that, then the money is usually sent to you electronically. It's like a wire, it's ACH, but it goes in your account electronically. So being a local company allows us a lot of flexibility, I think. And we only charge $150. That's the raw cost of doing the inspection. We don't charge $300 like some of these other national companies do. So, so it's generally a relatively easy process. Now that being said, we do have deals where, not you guys haven't done this, but we have some borrowers that, let's say, didn't do the work where they were supposed to. And so if that's the case, then we have to have a conversation with them like, well, we can't release the full draw, or can you guys finish up this work, that type of thing. So, so we're fair about it. I think we're fair overall. So.
Right. And if I can add to that, I don't even go on the website because I know your inspector. He's in my cell phone. So I usually just text Brian directly to let him know that we're ready. And he's been very easy to work with. And your company, unlike the other ones we work with that are local, they also send different inspectors, but you use the same guy. So Brian is very busy, but at least it's one person to talk to, and he's been very flexible and accommodating. So that's been great.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
you don't want to have, it's very frustrating as an investor to see a different face each time. And then it's like, he doesn't know if it's a different person, then he doesn't even know what he's looking at in the house. He doesn't know the progress. You know, it's just very hard for that new guy to evaluate it. So that's why I like to send the same person out if we can.
Okay, so other questions. Do you buy and hold rentals yourself? I mean, do you fund buy and hold properties? Sorry.
We were actually going to do that, and we kind of pulled back from that part of the market. So we don't do buy and holds for the long run. What we do though is we will fund somebody if they want to purchase, renovate, and rent out, and if they have a clear exit strategy. So in a way we do buy and holds, but just for the short run. So, but to qualify for that, we need to make sure that whoever the borrower is can refinance out with like a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac type of conventional loan. So that would mean we would then need to like see you got a pretty high credit score in 2 years tax returns, and we would be doing more underwriting to make sure that you would qualify on the exit strategy. Because one type of financing that's gone away completely right now is the bank statement, the non-QM products that you guys might be familiar with, that's a real estate investor who rents a property used to be able to say, oh, I have this finished property, it's cash flowing, here's my bank statements, I get the rent, and then they would get a loan. Well, that type of product has gone away. So the only way they can refinance out from us is if they're a full doc, full credit kind of borrower that can go to a bank, can go to like Quicken Loans and get a refi, which that's challenging these days. So.
Okay, and then where do you invest?
In terms of what areas do we lend in? So
yes,
so we lend in all of Washington, D.C. We lend pretty much I would say everywhere within about a 50-mile radius of our office, maybe even farther than that. Like we do Frederick, Hagerstown, Howard County, Annapolis. We have a deal right now in Ocean City, Maryland. We do Virginia. We do Stafford County, Fredericksburg, Virginia. We do Baltimore County. We do Baltimore City. We are going to be cautious in Baltimore City. We're going to be a little bit more cautious there, just because the valuation there sometimes in Baltimore City, what can happen is the property, a lot of the value is in the rehab that you complete, not in the location in the land. So, we do Baltimore City, but we can't fund in an area where, let's say, there are row homes selling for like 20,000, or, houses selling for like 30 or 40 grand. We've got to make sure there's enough intrinsic value in the neighborhood. A really hot area of Baltimore is like around the Fells Point, Palmer Park area. That's coming up pretty dramatically. Or even the area that you're doing your project in is actually a decent area, but there can be some marginal areas of Baltimore. If it's a blighted area where there are a lot of board ups, that's an area that we probably wouldn't want to lend in most of the time. But other than that, we do pretty much anything. We don't do true rural properties. So let's say if you've got comps, you're in the middle of nowhere and it's on well and septic and the comps are 5 miles away, that might be tough for us. So it needs to be in an area where there's actually housing and a suburban type of environment. Even Hagerstown would qualify for that.
Okay, I have more questions for you.
Okay.
Do you adjust your rates with experience, and what are your rates? I guess that's a double question.
Yeah, we do. So right now, for most borrowers that would come to us for the first time, they're going to be at 12% interest only, which works out to be 1% a month in terms of interest cost. Obviously, as an investor, your goal is to buy the property, do the rehab, and then get out of the project, sell it as quickly as you can. The faster you can do that, the lower your interest cost is. If somebody works with us on a repeat basis or they have a lot of experience, then rates can go down from there. And that's really an individualized discussion with the borrower, but they would have to have experience. So I would count on that 12% interest only for the most part, unless somebody comes to us and like, I've got a lot of experience, I've got a track record, then we could do better on that. And again, one of the things about our loans is that they're all individualized. Our loans are not Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA guidelines. They're basically, the way that they're set up is the guidelines are designed, we make the guidelines. We don't have to follow Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So when you bring a deal to us, we're going to underwrite that individual deal. Each one is going to be underwritten uniquely, and we're going to look at that transaction as sort of a one-off transaction and try to figure out is this a good project for you? Is it a good project for us? Does it look profitable?
And you do have points.
We do. And it really, it depends on the deal again. It depends on the deal.
Okay, give us an average, because some of the people in the group have experience, some don't, some are just starting out. So, I mean, I know it, again, it's a tricky question. I do understand, because you
Yeah,
look at
it
every
is.
deal differently, and you look at the investor in him or himself or herself. So what is your average range of points, though?
I would say, I mean, again, it ranges depending on the size of the loan, the experience of the investor, the whole deal structure, but roughly I would say 3% in that range for somebody that would come to us. But many times, if we're funding over 100% of the purchase price, so if we're doing our loan for over the purchase price, we may be actually financing those into the deal structure. So depending on the deal structure, it might not come out of your pocket necessarily.
So you didn't answer my question.
No, I said typically 3%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm teasing.
I know, I got
Okay.
you.
The next question was, so
I just want to
the terms.
comment. I want to comment on the points. I know as an investor, we look at our deals, we do the deal analyzer, and then we go all the points, the percentage, and all. So we have had experience on one of the property that Sapien did with that hard money lender that's out of state, had actually lower points. These projects took the longest time, not because we weren't working well, not because of the contractor, but because of the process. The process of having that out of town, out of state, even they were in California, lender.
Yeah.
By the time, they send you the inspector, and then it's a different inspector all the time.
Yeah.
And the process of all of that. And yes, they were offering lower points and even, a tiny bit of lower rates. But at the end, it ended up being more costly the way things were done, because the holding time was just like terrible. Like the holding time added on like weeks and weeks of this back and forth of things. So, I mean, we have to look at the numbers. And I think when if you're looking for hard money lenders, ask the right questions about the process itself, how you're going to obtain your draw, and how they work, because that will make the difference will be huge.
And I'd like to add too. I was going to say, in that process, they had a requirement that you cannot get more than one draw per 30 days. And that's one question I didn't think to ask, because it was like, oh, if I'm getting something done within 3 weeks, there shouldn't be a 30-day window where I have to request the next draw. So there, they're guaranteeing themselves at least a certain period of time for you holding that property before you even get into the deal. But if you don't know to ask that question, that's something that can cost you a lot of money in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Mickey, I appreciate that. I mean, I think prior to this whole crisis, there were a few national guys that maybe edged us out slightly in terms of the raw numbers, not by much. I mean, we were right in there with them, but most of those guys have stopped lending anyway. So I don't think, and when they come back, they're probably going to be more in line with our numbers. But I think you're right. It's very important, the draw process, because this isn't like going to a bank, getting an FHA loan where it doesn't matter the servicer, the servicing's all going to be the same. Like, you're going to be working hand in hand with your lender throughout the process. And if you have a big bureaucratic lender that basically is not responsive, you can't reach people, you can't talk to decision makers, it is going to drag your project out months and months and months. And the other thing I would say, they're just so large, some of these guys, they don't they're just not flexible. They're just not like customer service oriented, you know? So I think that's a big part of what we do. So.
Okay. So the term of your loans, I know with us it's been 12 months, and I know there's no prepayment penalty. How does it work for, do you do 6 months or do you do 12 months? What happened after the 12 months? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so we used to do shorter term loans, but we decided to give 12 months, a 12-month term, just because that was kind of in demand. People, obviously investors want to get their properties fixed up and sold within 3 to 4 months, and some do once in a while. They get them done really fast. But why put the borrower under a lot of pressure and say, oh, you got to get it done in 6 or 9 months, otherwise, we want our money back. So we give you a full 12 months. So that's usually plenty of time for almost any investor to get a project done. And look, I mean, if it goes beyond that, then we might have to have a conversation about doing an extension. That's going to be a case by case basis on extending. But if borrowers are making their payments and they're doing the right things, and they're trying to sell their properties or get them fixed up, we're fine with that. Somebody asked here, do you do for rentals also? Does that mean,
You answered the question. Basically,
yeah.
Do you fund rentals? But you did answer.
Yeah.
They missed that you did say that you will fund rentals, but your underwriting is stricter because you want to make sure that it can be refinanced afterwards on a conventional with a conventional bank, correct? Absolutely. And this is being recorded.
Okay.
So I will share the link with everybody as well, because somebody else came in later and asked what was your feeling with the COVID-19, and
Sure.
I did tell them you already discussed that.
Okay.
I do have a question that's been asked multiple times. How do you feel about second position lenders after you? And this is the question because for some of us, and especially with the Fortune Builder, what we try to do is not use all our funds. So we'll come to you to do the majority of the loan, and then we have somebody else within our group most of the time that will fund us the money to come to the table. So we put them in second position.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that because that becomes a lien on the property. I mean, you guys can do that. And look, I mean, I know if you pool funds together, that's actually fine if you want to do that. I know you've done that before in the past. And people grouping together to try to do one transaction. But I mean, that can be done without securing it against the property. You guys can have your own legal agreements and documents to kind of, you can have signed paperwork so that everyone, they know they're going to get repaid. But we're not a big fan of people using like gap funding and securing it against the property because that can cause problems with the title. We're just not it's basically gap funding. So if you do it kind of off the books where we're not really seeing it, it doesn't matter to us, but so.
Okay. So do you lend to JV teams, and what are your requirements?
Well, we're kind of doing that right now for you in a way, right? In a way, isn't it kind of like a JV team in a way?
Well, we try to make it legal by creating a company, but yes. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, what we did is we have Akin Developer as our main company, but the way we do it is one company manages the funds. So the project in Baltimore, Sapient Kedrick is managing the funds, and the project in Cheverly that we just bought, Israel Maisonette is managing the funds. Yeah. So that's kind of what we did.
Yeah. So in a way, that's kind of like a JV structure. So, I mean, I'm fine with JV structures as long as folks are experienced and they know what they're doing. I think The area where we're a little bit negative is sometimes we get a call, not from you guys, but we'll get a call from another borrower we've never talked to, not that experienced, and they're like, oh, 4 of us are going to go on this one LLC and buy this house. We're all going to pitch in. And that can be a little bit tricky because no one's really super experienced. We prefer that somebody's kind of in control. 1 or 2 people are in control of the LLC and the money. And then, you know, to kind of put 4 people on one LLC when they don't have, when there's like not one person in charge can be tough. That can be more tricky, I would say. So, and that can be some JV situations that are like that.
What do you consider experience to start being kinder with your rates?
Well, I mean, after we have a track record with somebody and let's say they've closed the first deal with us. So it's not just someone coming saying, hey, we have experience. It's also, we have experience with you. Like, we know that we worked with this borrower before and we worked well together. We have a good track record. You know, sometimes we get calls all day long and most people are nice, but we actually sometimes get these very combative people on the phone. They're like super combative. They want to argue about everything. They want to, and we're thinking, God, if we give this person a loan and they're so combative up front, imagine once we get into the transaction. So it's more about how well we work with someone after the first deal. You know, like how does it go? Like, how did the transaction go? How did the draw process go with them? Did they do the work that they said they were going to do? You know, and you know, everybody has a different quality of work, like a different level of work quality that they do, how they sort of implement their projects. So we kind of look at all those factors.
Okay, I'm answering some questions. So going back to the JV question, if you have a team of 2 or more, how do you qualify the team? Do you use one investor or all?
Well, it depends on the structure. If it's a JV team, is there going to be one person who's on the LLC, one member of the LLC? If there are multiple members of the LLC, then we're actually going to look at all of those members, kind of evaluate them. We are going to run credit. We're not credit score driven like the big guys, but we do look at credit. We do evaluate it. We kind of want to know who we're dealing with. So it depends. The answer to that question is it depends on who's on the LLC, who's involved in the transaction. Like, you might have a contractor that is part of your team, but he's not on the LLC. He can't stop the project or screw it up by doing something with the LLC. So we might not do any due diligence on that contractor, as an example.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, more questions. Hang on one second. The question is, if the credit is pulled, is it a soft or hard pull?
It's going to be a regular credit pull. I know everybody, you know, what we can do. So it's a regular hard pull realistically. But if you guys want to go to like one of those free credit report services and send it to us initially, just to kind of send it to us with the score so that we know what we're dealing with, we can do that. And then if for pre-qual, and then if you actually are ready, you got something under contract and we need to close the deal, then we can kind of do the full credit pull at that point. But look, I've been in lending before I was a private lender, I've been in traditional lending 10 years before that. 1 or 2 credit pulls on your credit, it's not really going to do much to your score. It doesn't really impact it that much. It's when you're going to like 5 different places and they each pull your credit, that's when you have an impact. So an occasional credit pull is not going to hurt you. But we'll take those free credit reports, like I said, for the initial pre-qual.
Okay. Let me ask you this question, because I know you yourself are an investor and we were talking about some of the projects that you've done. And we talked about, I do want to talk about permits because I know this is something that we have had issue with. Our Baltimore project, we have been on hold because the inspectors, we have to wait for them to come, and then they want everybody out of the
Yeah.
house.
Yeah.
And then they call in the contractor and they start talking to them one-on-one. So which areas, because I know you do PG County, you do DC, you do Maryland, areas in Maryland.
Yep.
Which area have you seen it to be the worst one for permits?
DC is the worst. DC, if you have a project in DC, Mickey's laughing about that. DC, you guys got lucky on that one, let me tell you. DC, if you have, let's say, you go into a property and they see like some trash in the yard and they think that there's somebody working on that property, they will go up and bang on the door with a code inspector. And if you don't open the door, they'll get the police there to open the door. So they're very, very rough in DC because it's a city. I mean, they have a lot of resources. It's very compact. So that's the toughest one. And then, so I'd say your construction costs in DC are much higher in general than it would be in PG County or Baltimore. It's just because of the permitting, because they make you go through so many hoops, and also the age of the properties. So if you've got a 100-year-old property and you start tearing out walls, then you're going to have to, they're going to make you rebuild the plumbing, the electrical, the framing. They're going to make you kind of start over again with the property, you know, and do a lot more work. I would say in some situations in, let's say, PG County and other areas outside of DC, if you're doing more of a cosmetic rehab, you may be able to get away without permits. If you have a, you know, you may be able to. So we don't really, we're not one of those companies like you must have permits for every single job, because you don't always need them. However, if you start that path, and I think this might relate to the Baltimore one, where you went and you pulled a bunch of permits, you guys are really forced to go down that path now because you're on their radar. They know that you are rehabbing the property. You can't get away from it now. So it's like you're going to have to go through the process. Hopefully in the next 30 days, maybe they'll loosen up with those inspections and let you be in the property with the mask and everything, and let the regular process go on. But you don't always need a permit. Sometimes you can get away without it, but it is a risk to not do it. Like we had somebody in PG County, this was 2 weeks ago in Fort Washington. He was working on a property. He did not pull permits, and he was carrying drywall into a house. And like a WSSC guy was driving around, and the guy's like, "Are you working on this house? Do you have a permit?" He's like, "No, I'm just sprucing it up. You don't need to come inside." He's like, "You can't come inside." And he's like, "Get off my property." He told the guy to leave. So the WSSC guy went and got a cop. They came back and he's like, "You have to let me in. Otherwise, we're just going to make your life a living hell. Let me into the property. And, you know, I kind of busted you here." So we basically had to let him in, and now he's going to have to pull permits. So that was PG. But I think his mistake was the guy put a dumpster in the driveway. To put a dumpster in the driveway without permits is insane. I don't know why he did that, but so. But yeah, cool. It just depends. So
that was one of the questions I wanted to address, because I know, like you said, you know, the one of the one we did was cosmetic. We didn't do major changes, and the Baltimore is a gut. I mean, when you go to Baltimore, you pretty much have a shell, and we're starting from scratch. All the plumbing, electrical, HVAC. I mean, we had to have permit. There's no way with that one.
No, you're right. You had to have it. But let me just stop you and say one thing. One advantage of getting permits, and you guys know this as agents, when you go to sell it, it is going to be easier, and you're going to get a higher price, because that's actually a selling point to be able to say, this house passed all permits, the city looked at it, the county looked at it. Then you're going to have an easier time selling it, in my opinion.
Yes, and then another thing too is that when I sell a renovation, I've noticed some of the agents are starting to ask for permits because they know they can see when it was a cosmetic renovation, they are asking, did you guys pull permits? And you do have to tell them, well, we didn't change anything, we didn't move anything, so it was a very limited cosmetic. So you have, even on the forms, they have updated our forms whether it's PG County or in the state of Maryland, it does ask you if you have done any type of renovation, did you pull permits?
Yeah.
And you have to specify whether it was cosmetic or not.
Right.
So, you know, they're starting to crack down on that.
They
So
are.
just be mindful of what you do.
I agree. They're cracking down now. They are. Yep.
And
So
also
I
for
go, sorry.
I wanted to ask for the permits, it helps you also structureize your work, right? When are you going to pay that electrician that came? What are you going to pay once the inspection is passed? When are you going to pay this one? You know, your final draw, how you're going to pay your contractor? Well, you pay them when the final inspection is done also. So you can work with those permitting and inspection as markers of how your project is going, and it helps you structure everything and to make sure that things are done accordingly, so that, you know, if you don't pass this one, it's because there is a reason why you're not passing that permit. It's not just because
Right.
the inspector doesn't like you. There is a reason.
Yeah.
Fix it, and then you move on. So you just work with
If I
it.
may add also to that is some of these inspectors, usually they're assigned to territories, so we're starting to know them. And sometimes, you know, they might be a pain, like the WSSC is the worst. It doesn't matter who you get, they're
Yeah.
just a pain. That's why PG County and everybody else tells you get WSSC in first, then we come, because they don't even want to waste their time because they know how picky WSSC is. But the other inspectors for like PG County, like in Cheverly, the guy was like, okay, I just need you to fix this. Or like even the Baltimore County guy, he said, I'm going to pass you for this. Just fix this one by the time I come to the next inspection.
Yeah.
So most
Yeah.
inspector will do that. But you have a few like WSSC, again, they're just a pain. And then one of our members just said that, who's the engineer, Rupert, he said that PG County now is online, offered the online permits on a limited basis, and they have broken them down in 4 levels, 1 to 4. So I'm actually going to go look at it because we have to start pulling our permits for the house we just purchased.
Yeah, and I would say one of the comments about the permits that I agree with there is that I see the biggest problem that our borrowers have with real estate investing is managing contractors. It's one of the hardest things because that contractor, they're used to collecting money and doing these projects all the time. And if you have an unscrupulous contractor, they might tell you, hey, give me 30, 40% of the labor budget up front. Then they do some substandard work, then walk away. We've seen that happen many times. And then they have to fight with that contractor. So it's having the county approve the work, then is one thing where you can say, well, I'm not going to give you your check until the county says you did it right, or the city said you did it right. So it does provide like an extra check and balance to the process. But it is a pain too, so.
It is.
So it can be.
If no one has any more questions about permits, I think I wanted to go back again to the kind of like the state of the what you call going on right now, basically with the COVID and what you've seen in the past, right? Because you've been in the business for over 10 years, but
Yeah.
you came just at the end of the crisis, 2008. So when you were coming into started at during the time of the crisis compared to what we're kind of seeing now, the few changes that the lenders implemented right away, do you see any similarities between those two, or is it slightly different than what you've seen when you in the 2008 2009 era?
Well, I do see there are some similarities. First of all, in terms of the financing side, what happened in '08 was that a lot of companies were securitizing the paper. They were basically bundling all these loans and they were selling them off. So think about the non-QM products that some of your buyers might use, like the bank statement programs, things like that. That's kind of similar to the subprime of yesteryear. Those products went away pretty quickly in '08. They kind of dried up, and we're seeing that right now. So but the thing is, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA was always there. That was there in 2008. That didn't go away. They were still making the same loans for regular retail buyers. Now, property values, things like that. What really drove the prices down in like 2009, 2010 is that the supply of properties, it grew so much because the loans that were being written, they were writing loans for owner occupants that made no sense. Like the people didn't really qualify under the old guidelines. They were just like all no doc loans, 95 LTV, no docs. Like if you could fog a mirror, you could get a loan in like '06, '07. You didn't, that really, I mean, it was that easy. So those type of loans are gone. So like your retail buyers now that you're dealing with, they're all pay stubs, W-2s, like they have a certain level of credit quality. That hasn't gone away. So I think that that the supply would have to go up dramatically for us to see like prices start to really go down. I mean, you would have to see the amount of inventory in the market skyrocket. So, and I don't see that happening unless you guys are seeing it. So
I'm not seeing that, and Clarette also can vouch that. I mean, we've been a 3-month inventory for years, and and when I'm saying years, it's been like at least 3 years. Our inventory has been tight, and I don't see that improving now. I don't see that we have an inventory of 4 months. I mean, this is spring, and we understand it's a crazy spring, but I'm still not seeing a ton of houses on the market, and not just houses, a ton of good houses,
right,
because you have houses and you have good inventory. And this is still pretty tight. You still don't see a lot of nice houses. So when us as investors are coming in and we're bringing our properties that are nicely redone, we get a ton of traffic. Clarette has a house in Baltimore. She's getting a ton of traffic in the house because it looks nice. So these buyers now, it's all visual. It has to look nice. It has to look like HDTV. So you have to have your gray walls or your neutral walls, your white kitchen, your open floor concept. You can see from the back of the house, from the entrance. They really like to see these things. So if you don't have those in your houses, and sometimes it's just a simple coat of paint and just maybe painting the cabinets white, and you can actually make a difference. So we're still not seeing a ton of inventory. But my concern, like I was saying to you, was that if Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae are starting to devalue the appraisal, that will hurt us more than helping us. So I think it's a little premature for them to do that.
And look, maybe there will be more inventory on the market by the fall. There probably will be a higher months of inventory, but as long as it doesn't go up dramatically, then we'll be okay. And with the Freddie Mae, Freddie Mac cuts, I think that has to do more with them not going in the houses and not seeing the quality of the work, seeing the renovations. But that could be lifted anytime. So I don't know. We'll see.
Perfect. Is there any other question, or did everybody kind of get their question answered by Kyle? And again, for those who came in later, we have been working with Kyle on 3 projects. There's other people that were coming in as we were talking. He funded our first deal in DC. He's funding our other deal in Baltimore. It's the complete gut, and he's going to fund our other one, a third one in Cheverly, Maryland that we just purchased. We're starting to do we're pulling the permits and doing the demos and everything. We just got it. So, and he is local. He is in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And out of what we did is when we started, and no insult to Kyle, and he knows because we had this conversation before. Sapient has done 3 projects so far. So the first one was with Kyle. The second one, we tried patch of land there in California because we wanted to kind of compare the different lenders. And Mickey and Israel Maisonette Solution funded with Washington Capital Mutual. So, and what we did is, Washington Capital Partners. So what we did is we compared all 3 lenders because we wanted to see what was out there and was available. Another person we also contacted is Temple View Capital. That's another lender that's been talking to us for a while. And we haven't done anything with Temple View, but we've done a project with the 3 different lenders. And Kyle knows, and I've said that to him, out of all 3, they have been the easiest to work with. They're the quickest to get to. He was not happy with me when I told him I didn't want to do one project with him. And then I called him back. He's like, yes, you're frustrating me a little. I was like, I know, Kyle, but you know, we're investors too. So, you know, everybody's looking at the bottom line here. But he's been great with working with us. He actually saved us on this last deal. And we told him that, you know, we actually thanked him for being able to come in and close in 2 weeks. And another thing that I've been trying to negotiate with Kyle, I've been telling him that we wanted to do more work with him and that we're going to try to send more people from the group just because we've been, you know, he's been so helpful and he's been available. So, and I've been trying to tell him that when we start sending him per people, his monthly rate has to go down, 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 down. And he's been pushing back to me and he's like, bring me the money and then we can talk. So that's another reason. Yeah, I definitely wanted to introduce Kyle to the group so that he sees that we are actively in the group. And it's unfortunate that, you know, we got shut down. I don't know when we're going to be able to have meetings again in my office in Gaithersburg or, you know, but one of these days when we come back, I'll definitely want you, Kyle, to come by and actually meet the people that are coming. So we have now we have about the last count, I have about 180 members in the group. And out of that, I do have, I'll say, about 30 or so that are active. And some are local, some are in Virginia, Maryland, some are contacting us. So we do have people that are looking to, that are actively trying to do some you know, renovations.
Yep.
And we are also a lot of people are also interested in rentals. So purchase it, renovate it, and then refinance it later. So if you can go back into that product and consider that product, I think some of our members, including us, will be contacting you because we are looking. Clarette is shaking, yes, because Clarette has some more that she's trying to do. So, and then we are, as Akin Developer, we are starting to look at rentals. We have one that we're looking at right now. It's going to take some time because the seller is overseas and all the embassies and consulates are closed. But these are things like that we are, and this inventory, like you said, is starting to come in, is trickling in. Yeah. So we're starting to see more of these.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep that in mind. I mean, it's the fixed to rent market is actually, it will become a larger percentage of the overall rehab market. We've noticed that because people weren't getting the same margins on these rehabs. They're like, I want to do something for the long run. So we understand that. So we're open to it, but we got to have a clear exit strategy. People have to be able to refinance out. And right now that the bank statement product that was out there is pretty much gone. The 30-year bank statement was like a non-QM product. It's just not out there right now, but it may come back. So we'll see.
So there's a new question saying, do you have to get qualified before getting the proof of funds? I was going to answer that you do have to provide some information. I don't remember what we gave you, but I think we gave you our I mean, what would you want them to send you in order to get the proof of funds?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we have a very easy online application. It's a lot simpler than the 1003 you fill out for conventional. So if you just contact our office, and then Melissa will just send you a link to an email application. You just fill it out. We'll take a look at it. If you don't want us to run your credit, then you can send us one of those free credit reports with one score. Then we'll just have a conversation. Then we'll do a proof of funds letter. And then once you're in our system, it's really easy. We can keep doing those proof of funds letters for different offers. So yeah, it's not that much information you have to provide. So
I have another comment that's actually a very good comment from Christopher. He is in Virginia. So he's saying that at 12%, his margins are very tight, because we know how I will provide Kyle's information with the link to the recording as soon as we're done. So being in Virginia, as you know, the margin is very tight. So what I was going to say is, and I was trying to say again, it depends, you know, which is what I understood from you. I kind of asked you for a general number, but I know from working with you, you're going to base it on the deal and the experience. Am I right?
Yeah, I am. So I threw out a general number to you, but it really is deal dependent, because there is a difference between doing something in Northern Virginia where you're paying $350,000 for a townhouse in Fairfax, and let's say some $100,000 property up in Hagerstown. I mean, it's a different property, a different level of risk, and different loan size. So loan size comes into play too. So again, if you have something in Northern Virginia and you get it under contract, send it to us, and we'll look at it. So it really, I can't say that enough. It's deal dependent. And I've also had cases where somebody bought a property cash, and a borrower has a lot of money. They bought a property cash for like $250,000, but then they ran out of money for renovation. They only need $100,000. The loan amount's small, but the LTV is incredibly low. The ARV might be 400. Well, the LTV is very low. That might be what I just put into my own IRA. And I do loans out of my IRA. So we have like different pots of money, the company money, my IRA money. So they're different sort of pots of money. So what I'm saying is, if you have something that you think, hey, this is a really amazing deal, it's a great area, send it to us. So that's the most I can say there. I will say this, guys, is that you're focusing a lot of energy on just solely rate. And I think what you're going to find in the marketplace right now is that because so many institutional lenders have pulled out of the market, there's just not going to be, you're not going to see as many of these guys, let's say out of California, trying to undercut everyone else. I mean, a lot of them are out of the market. They're not lending anymore, or they are lending, but their guidelines are so stringent that you might not qualify. So ultimately, send us a deal, we'll look at it and then have a conversation.
Great. Is there anything you want to close with? Because we're almost at 8, it's 7:46.
I would just say that I was worried 6 months ago about the direction that the real estate market was going. I'm not as worried right now, because I'm actually seeing the real-time data. Some of our borrowers are sending us contracts. They're saying, we just got this property, we're selling this property that we renovated, and here's the contract price. And the prices aren't that bad. They're really in line with what it should be based on the ARV appraisal. So that tells me that there's still demand, there's still, the market is still functioning properly. So I think that's really important. The second thing is, you know, we're local, we have great service, we don't have a lot of bureaucracy. We make our own rules, and we're really able to provide like higher level of service than most companies out there. So that's my closing. And thank you for inviting us. And it's great to meet everybody. And hopefully I'll be able to meet everyone in person sooner rather than later. Okay. So
I'm hoping we can do a Christmas party this year, and then have you and everybody from your. I still haven't met Melissa. I talk to Melissa all the time, but I don't know what she looks like. Okay. So I would love to meet her in person. Yeah, and to everybody else, like I said, this is being recorded. I will send the link when I figure out how to send the link. My first time recording a Zoom, so we're getting high tech now. Yep. So we will provide it. I will provide Kyle's and Melissa's email, because Melissa will be the person that you speak with. She does all the processing, and then I will provide again a link to their website. So we've had great experience with them. We definitely can vouch for them. And then we look forward to a bunch of us. Make sure you remind him where you got his information from, so that Kyle can, because I told Kyle he needs to have a special package for us, just for us.
Okay. Let us know that you were on this call. Let us know. Yes,
please do. And then thank you everybody who came. We really liked it. We had I think we had about 26 participants at some point. People came in and out. And you guys stay safe.
All right, sounds good. Thank you guys.
Bye everybody. Okay. Bye.